Have you ever wondered what would happen if a major economic powerhouse just stopped growing? For 3 decades. That's not a hypothetical scenario. It's the real story of Japan. After World War II, Japan performed an economic miracle. From the 1950s to the 1980s, its economy grew at an astonishing average of nearly 10% per year. They became the world's second largest economy, a leader in electronics, cars, and so much more. Companies like Sony, Toyota, and Nintendo became household names globally. It seemed like Japan's rise was unstoppable. People were talking about the Japan model as the future of capitalism. But then, the 90s hit, and everything changed. The once unstoppable engine of growth sputtered and stalled. What followed was a period that Japan now calls the lost decades. So, what on earth happened? How did the land of the rising sun turn into the land of the stagnant economy? Today, we are diving deep into the dramatic story of Japan's economic bubble, its spectacular burst, and the long, hard road that followed. Let's rewind to the 1980s. Japan was on top of the world. Confidence was sky high, and money was flowing like water. This was the era of the bubble economy. To understand this bubble, we have to look at something called the Plaza Accord of 1985. The United States was struggling with a huge trade deficit, a lot of it with Japan. So, the major economic powers, including Japan, agreed to devalue the US dollar against the Japanese yen. The result? The yen became much stronger, almost doubling in value against the dollar in just a couple of years. This should have made Japanese exports more expensive and hurt their economy, right? Well, to counteract this, the Bank of Japan did something drastic. They slashed interest rates. They made it incredibly cheap to borrow money. And when money is cheap, people and companies tend to borrow a lot of it. This flood of cheap money had to go somewhere, and it poured into 2 main areas, the stock market and real estate. The results were mind-boggling. The Nikkei 225, Japan's main stock index, skyrocketed. From 1985 to the end of 1989, it more than tripled in value. At its peak, the Japanese stock market was worth more than the US stock market, even though its economy was much smaller. But the real craziness was in real estate. Property prices in cities like Tokyo went through the roof. Stories from that time sound almost mythical. It was said that the land under the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was worth more than all the real estate in California. A small patch of land in Ginza, Tokyo's posh shopping district, was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars per square meter. Companies, flush with cash, bought up assets at home and abroad, famously snapping up iconic properties like Rockefeller Center in New York. Everyone thought the party would never end. People took out massive loans to buy apartments they couldn't really afford, convinced that the prices would just keep going up. The prevailing belief was that land is a myth. It would never lose value. This was the peak of the bubble, a speculative frenzy built on cheap credit and overwhelming optimism. But as we all know, bubbles have one thing in common: they always burst. The beginning of the end came in 1989. The Bank of Japan, finally worried about the out-of-control speculation, decided it was time to cool things down. They started raising interest rates, slowly at first, then more aggressively. This was like pulling the plug on the whole party. Suddenly, borrowing money wasn't cheap anymore. The fuel that had powered the speculative fire was gone. On the very last trading day of 1989, the Nikkei stock index hit its all-time high. Then, in 1990, the crash began. The stock market went into a freefall. Within a year, it had lost trillions of dollars in value. The real estate market followed soon after. As interest rates rose, people couldn't afford their mortgage payments. Companies that had borrowed heavily against their property holdings were in deep trouble. The myth of ever-rising land prices was shattered. Prices didn't just stagnate, they plummeted. People who had bought at the peak were now stuck with properties worth a fraction of what they paid, and massive debts they could never hope to repay. This created what we call a balance sheet recession. Here's what that means. Normally, in a recession, a central bank can cut interest rates to encourage people to borrow and spend, kickstarting the economy. But in Japan, that didn't work. Even with interest rates near zero, nobody wanted to borrow. Why? Because individuals and companies weren't focused on new investments or spending. They were completely preoccupied with paying off the massive debts they had accumulated during the bubble years. Their balance sheets were a mess. Instead of borrowing more, they used any spare cash to pay down their loans. This is a debt deflation spiral. As everyone tries to save money and pay off debt, demand in the economy collapses. When demand falls, prices for goods and services start to fall too. This is deflation. And deflation is an economy killer. Why would you buy something today if you know it will be cheaper tomorrow? This mindset causes people to postpone spending, which further reduces demand, leading to more price drops, and the cycle continues. Japan was trapped. This deflationary trap and the balance sheet recession are the core reasons why the 90s became Japan's first lost decade. The government tried to fight back. They launched huge spending programs, building bridges, roads, and tunnels all over the country to try and stimulate demand. But it was like pouring water into a leaky bucket. The fundamental problem was the private sector's obsession with paying down debt. On top of that, Japan's banking system was in crisis. The banks had lent out enormous sums of money during the bubble, using inflated real estate as collateral. When property values crashed, the loans went bad. The banks were left holding trillions of yen in non-performing loans, or zombie loans. But instead of letting these failing zombie companies go bankrupt, the banks often kept lending them just enough money to stay afloat, hoping the economy would recover and they'd get their money back. This kept inefficient companies alive, preventing new, more dynamic businesses from taking their place and slowing down the whole recovery process. So, one lost decade turned into two, and then arguably three. The 2000s and 2010s saw periods of slight recovery, but Japan never regained its former dynamism. Deflation remained a persistent enemy, and new challenges emerged. One of the biggest is demographics. Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world and a very low birth rate. A shrinking and aging population means a smaller workforce and fewer consumers. This puts a natural brake on economic growth. It also puts immense strain on the social security system, with fewer workers supporting a growing number of retirees. Another issue was a lack of structural reform. For a long time, Japan's economy was characterized by lifetime employment, seniority-based wages, and a close relationship between government and big business. While this system worked well during the high-growth era, it made the economy less flexible and less able to adapt to the new globalized world. Layoffs were difficult, which protected workers but also made companies hesitant to hire and innovate. So what's the situation today? Has Japan finally escaped its long slump? The answer is complicated. In 2012, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe launched an aggressive economic policy known as Abenomics. It had three arrows: massive monetary easing from the Bank of Japan to fight deflation, flexible fiscal policy to stimulate demand, and structural reforms to make the economy more competitive. The results have been mixed. Abenomics did manage to pull Japan out of chronic deflation for a while, and corporate profits improved. The stock market rallied, but it hasn't delivered the sustained, robust growth that was hoped for. Real wages have remained largely stagnant for the average person, and the third arrow, structural reform, has proven to be the most difficult to implement. Japan is still grappling with its demographic destiny and the need to reinvent its economic model for the 21st century. The story of Japan's lost decades is a powerful cautionary tale. It shows how quickly a booming economy can unravel, and how difficult it is to escape the psychological and financial trap of a burst bubble. It's a lesson in the dangers of speculative manias, the crippling effects of deflation, and the immense challenge of turning around a complex, aging society. But it's also a story of resilience. Despite everything, Japan remains a highly advanced, wealthy, and stable country, a leader in robotics, high-tech manufacturing, and culture. Its journey is far from over. What do you think? Can Japan make a full comeback? What lessons can other countries learn from its experience? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this deep dive interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about the global economy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.